data gathering, recording, meron questions, and then you have the conclusion. I have a problem with this kasi how the heck will you know what you're doing if you don't have an objective? So you're supposed to come up with the objective from the experiment. For a student, that is so hard. I encountered this type of experiments when I was in high school, and I was really having a hard time. Anong isusulat ko dyan sa objective? When you don't have a grasp on what the topic is or what the experiment is all about. So I make it a point na before an experiment, you should already write the objectives. So here's an example of a guided study sheet. So in this by the way, this guided study sheet is actually used by one of my students who got kicked out. Okay, so he got kicked out of PSI, and then he had to before he was accepted by DepEd, he has to take remedials from me. But this is during summer, so and the student lives very far. I think he's not from Luzon, so there's no way, and he's already gone to the province, and he doesn't want to come back to Manila to take the remedials. So buti na lang I was doing study sheets, and this study sheet was the very study sheet that he took during normal classes while he was in PSI. So I sent him copies of the study sheets for 4th quarter, which includes electrochemistry, and this is one of them. Okay. So in the topic for this study sheet is electrochemistry, subtitle redox review. So the redox review is about redox reactions and how to balance them. This is an introduction to electrochemistry, which is about galvanic cells and batteries. So basically, if you see here, now you might be asking, is there a format for the study sheet? There's no rigid format for the study sheet. It's a topic that dictates the format. Ang mahalaga lang is you have here the objective. Para merong goal yung bata. So begin with the end in mind so that they'll have a goal. So in a study sheet, meron ding experiment. You can actually incorporate experiments. So I have here a very short one-sentence experiment. Okay. In class, we have a setup for this. We have a beaker of copper sulfate solution, and then we have zinc metal strips. So each group puts the zinc metal into the copper solution. Now, in the absence of actual experiments, you can actually take video clips online and show them to the students. So here's a clip I got from online. So this is the very same experiment that we do in the class. So mapapansin nyo, the copper strip from a shiny metallic object, magiging dark brown siya, even reddish. As well, there are things growing on it. Those are actually copper metals. Okay, so in this study sheet, right after that experiment, there are questions here. So the first question is, predict the product of the chemical reaction by using the activity series, and complete the chemical equation below. So this is just a review, so they're supposed to know how to use the activities series, and they're supposed to know how to balance reactions. So meron na rin siyang review, meron siyang questions agad, formative questions that will tap their knowledge. So in study sheets, meron kang formative questions that are incorporated all throughout the study sheet. So the next question was, after seeing the video, they're asked to describe what's happening. So this is important because it makes it tells you kung talaga bang pinanood ng bata yung video or talaga bang ni-research niya or he took time to understand it. So kung mapapansin nyo, merong check marks and X marks on this study sheet. Kasi what my student did was, so I sent this to him and then he sent it back with answers. Now here on this part, kung mapapansin nyo, I wrote a note, please be specific so I can assess if you truly understand. Okay, so in this answer here, balance the reactions. And I'm asking balance what in the reactions. So the specific question here is, if you compare the first equations with the step 2 equation, ang binabalance actually here is the number of atoms, which the student failed to specify. But that's okay. If they got it wrong the first time, you can just send back the study sheet to the student so that he can answer again. Kasi nga, learning curve, remember? So, in a study sheet, you have to include questions that you would ordinarily ask during a lecture. So, yung mga questions dito, yan na yung questions mo during the lecture. So, you're actually doing a lecture in paper form. So, you also have to provide examples. Like in this case, the balancing. I provided the example, but I already provided the right balance, the right steps for the balancing the reaction. And then I asked them to write down the rules or the patterns of how you balance a chemical reaction. And in that way, hindi ba yung spoon feeding na binibigay mo lang sa kanila and then they identify the examples using your rules. Hindi, I do it the other way. So again, guided study sheets essentially is your lecture delivered on paper. So this form of delivery makes guided study sheets suitable for online learning. Kasi nga, nandun na yung lecture nyo eh. So even if you're present or not, nandun ang lecture. The students read and answer the questions. It's like attending your lecture. But of course, syempre, nothing beats a face-to-face lecture. But in this pandemic, we have no choice. So here's the rest of the study sheet. So again, merong X marks. So if you look at this example here, it's wrong because hindi balance yung equation. So if you look at the charges, hindi siya balance. In this case, hindi pa rin balance yung equation kasi this zinc atom here is supposed to get a positive 2 charge. So all over, questions after questions, the questions are designed so that they'll think step by step, so that they'll think what is happening. So review siya step by step. So here we go to the redox reactions. A brief discussion on what redox reactions are. As much as possible, I really keep them short. Kasi if you put in too much words, hindi naman nila babasahin, parang mawawala lang sa. So I go straight to questions and examples and para maging mas engaged sila. So right here, meron siyang hindi sinagutan. Where is your final answer? Where is your answer for this item? Okay, so questions. May mga questions ako. Balance how? Where do we add the OH in this portion? Or the hydroxide ion? Something like that. Here's another example. So this particular study sheet, I did for 4 hours because I had to draw the models of the atoms, which I think is Hindi siya ganun kaganda, pero but it did the purpose, so I'm happy with it. So here, this is a discussion about the definitions of acids and bases. So we have here the Arrhenius definition. So Arrhenius definition was given by Savants Arrhenius. Tapos, instead of giving them the definition of what an Arrhenius acid is, I gave them examples. And then gave them guide questions para ma-figure out nila what is the definition of an Arrhenius acid. So what are the ions formed in this examples? So hydrochloric acid, meron kang H+, chloride ion. Sulfuric acid, you have H+ plus sulfate ion. So they write down here H+, Cl-, OH-, SO4 2-, and H+. So what is common between the two examples? So again, it's the H+. So there you go. You can actually derive the definition of what an Arrhenius acid is by looking at the examples, but by looking at what's common in these examples. So it's the same goes with the definition of an Arrhenius base. So basically, you give them examples, you guide them, you guide their thinking so that they'll understand the lesson. Basically, I spend about 4 hours making one study sheet. It's like, well, if you're used to making your lesson plans, I think you'll be good with making study sheets. So, ito po yung workflow for study sheets when using it online. So you make your study sheets, you send it to the students answer the study sheets, you check, they send you back the study sheets, you check the study sheets, they answer it again, and then you check it again until they get all the answers correct. Now again, since they're just learning, you use these study sheets and they get scores for each submission. So you use this as plus points for kung ano man yung summative